when you talked about pie, I started thinking that instead of taking a piece of somebody else's pie, as you're saying, you're creating your own pie. You're creating a pie which then you can share with other people. This advice somebody gave me one time. He said, if you really want to do what you want to do with your life, find a need that needs to be filled and fill that. So finding your dream, finding that thing that makes you feel happy and productive. And the benefits in my own life has been, people always talk about, how do I get rid of inner conflict in my life? And I don't think that's possible until you're actually doing what you want to do with your time. And so the foremost benefits are that I can sleep at night, knowing that I'm spending my time doing what I want to do here on this earth.
So one of the things for me that's most important, that's been more valuable than anything else in my life, to be able to live my life for me, not somebody else, is honor the relationship I have with mystery, with the unknown. In the relationship I have with mystery is I allow myself to get afraid of it, afraid of the unknowns, to be scared of the things I haven't done before, but do them anyway. I think there was a wise person that said one time, be afraid, but don't let your fears stop you.
Yeah, and I think a wise man also said the only thing to fear is fear itself. Just like the paycation, the idea of like, why work a job that I don't want to when I can find ways to get paid to do things that I would pay to do, is that this is not a path of security, it's not a path of safety. It's actually a path of a lot of vulnerability and like a lot of like the unknown. When you're doing this, when you're pursuing your passion and trying to find ways to get paid to do it, it is a very vulnerable road. And
is that actually that everything is a risk? That it's a risk to stay where you are in your life and keep doing the things you don't want to do. You know, what's the risk of that? The risk of that is your own well-being, your own happiness, and your own time. But it's also a risk to step in the unknown, to do something new. But we're so conditioned in our society to look at the worst thing possible. So we say, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? And then we make our decision, well, that's a risk and that's not a risk. When in fact, what's the bigger risk than giving up who you are and what you want to do with your life?
Feel the fear and do it anyways.
I would call it purpose-driven fear. The question is, do you allow yourself to be afraid going into the mystery, the unknown, or are you afraid to be afraid? If you're afraid to be afraid, that's the paralysis you were talking about. So if you're afraid to be afraid, your future becomes incredibly predictable. It will just be a mirror reflection of your past, because your past is predictable, it's familiar. And is that a shallow day of life, or a shallow life, or what? If you only lived one day of your life, but it repeated itself 100,000 times, that's incredibly pointless. The other question is, what's the difference between living in your head and living in your heart? Scientifically speaking, the electromagnetic field of the heart is 5,000 times stronger than the electromagnetic field of your head. Could you consider your head is all about self-preservation, making things predictable, making things controlled, no risk? What if your heart's not about self-preservation, but all about self-realization? So the question to ask yourself every morning when you wake up is, am I on this earth to live my life, or am I on this earth to run from my life?
And I like what you said a lot, and I think that's true, that these ideas that, well, just take the safe route, or you'll get your health insurance this way, like just do this so you can go to school, and then you get the job, and then you can get the house, and then that cycle, this rat race idea.
Well, it's important to get your health insurance if you're not doing what you want to do, because you're probably going to get sick eventually because of all the emotions that you're holding in there.
Yeah, and I've also heard get health assurance instead of insurance, and I think this is a way to assure your health by pursuing your passion and being in touch with your heart and not being lost in your mind, but being lost in the everyday moment. I love being lost in the moment. What's better than that? And I think this is a way. If you're working 40 hours a week, or heck, 20 hours a week of something you don't want to do, I don't know if I buy into it. I don't know if I can buy into you'll have the health assurance that you need if you're sacrificing your time for some feeling of security, when really we might thrive off of insecurity.
Absolutely. Insecurity, perhaps food for the spirit, death to the ego. Security, food for the ego, but death to the spirit.
That's good.
Maybe I mean, how scary would it be if you were living your life 100% off course, out of phase, but you had no alarm system, you had no way to get your own attention, that you're going the wrong way on a one-way street?
Most of us are gambling on the biggest risk of all, the bet that we can buy the freedom to do what we want later in life, after we made enough money doing what we don't want to do, or after we pleased enough people. But I think it's up to us to be able to define our goal, or define what we want to do with our life, and then take up the means to moving forward in that direction. Taking responsibility, I think, is like the main thing. It's like doing what you want to do is being responsible, because then you're taking health assurance, because you're putting yourself in a position of well-being, taking the responsibility to do that.
Either. I don't buy it. I don't buy that I'm supposed to work for 30 years of my life doing something I don't want to do, so then I can retire. By that time, I think I'm not going to be able to do nearly as much as I can do now. Right now, I'm thriving. This is the moment. Right now is the time. And no matter who you are right now, you're only going to get older. Time is fleeting. You're only going to get closer to death. Every moment, you just got closer to death. So why don't we spend that time, that fleeting time right now, pursuing our passion? What's more beautiful than that? I'd rather be that homeless guy in the street, or these guys that you see all up in Encinitas, like living out at the back of their trucks, doing what they love, rather than thinking that, oh, if I can just work 20 more years and save this money, then I can do what I want to, because you could, in that time, you could easily die. Or you could just get old and ragged. And
we're too sick to even
all those 20 years of not doing what you want can really take a huge toll on your health. So while you have the time, right now is the time. My clock says now.
I would suggest that doing what we love has nothing to do with sitting around trying to figure out what it is we love. I don't think it's a realization that can come in our head. I think it's only an embodiment that we can encounter when we are living our life, rather than sitting back trying to premeditate our life and thinking about our life.
Through experimenting.
Yeah, so is the purpose of life to find our purpose of life, or is the purpose of life to simply live our life? You know, there's a difference. We all know the old saying, there's a difference between living and existing. If we're in a place of existence, we don't feel the life that wants to come through us. So there's an interesting phenomenon that happens. We have to compensate for what we're not feeling. So we might get addicted to stimulants, sugar, cocaine, crack, crystal meth, all those soft drugs, because we don't feel life being lived. So we need to feel something just to validate the feeling experience that we're alive. But we actually get high on life. We feel the flow of life because we're actually living our life.
I totally agree with you. So many people live their lives for the weekend.
Yeah, it reminded me of this quote that I have in my book. It says that there's a difference between learning it and living it, and that was ultimately what inspired me to take the step to do what I wanted to do with my life, is that I realized that I was learning it. I was aware of the possibilities, or the quotes, anything's possible, you can do anything, you can always live your dreams. But ask yourself if that's how you're living it, if that's where you're leaving it at, or if you're actually living it, which is courageously taking steps towards experimenting, even if you don't know where to begin, finding things that make you feel alive just through taking the steps, as he's saying, into fun comfortability. You can get to know me. My name's Jake Ducey, J-K-E, D as in David, U-C-E-Y, and I wrote the new best-selling book, Into the Wind, which you can get on Amazon, which is actually about taking the step from learning it to begin to actually live it and getting fun comfortable. And so at 19 I quit school and college basketball, and I traveled around the world without a map to prove that we can do what we want to do if we can take the steps.
Yeah, I'm JP Sears. You can find me right here on YouTube at youtube.com/awakenwithjp, all one word. You can also check out my personal website, innerawakeningsonline.com.
And you can find him in